300 hours, deep South China Sea, 10 miles west of Mischief Reef. The ocean floor is a void of absolute darkness, where the pressure creates a crushing weight against the steel hull. Inside the nuclear attack submarine, red battle lights bathe the command deck in a crimson glow. The air is recycled, cool, and smells of ozone and machine oil. Sailors stand motionless at their stations, watching green sonar waterfalls cascade down digital screens. The silence is heavy, thick, broken only by the low, rhythmic hum of the reactor coolant pumps. No one speaks, no one moves unnecessarily. The commander gives a curt, sharp nod to the dive officer. The dry dock shelter attached to the submarine's spine hisses violently. Massive hydraulic clamps groan under the strain as the seal breaks. Freezing cold seawater floods the chamber, swirling around the black-clad figures inside. 4 SEAL delivery vehicles, miniature submersibles, slide out from the mothership. They drift into the black abyss like predatory sharks, engines engaging with a low electric purr. The team glides through the murky water. Strong currents tug at the wetsuits of the elite divers, threatening to pull them off course. They check their illuminated wrist compasses. Green luminescence glows faintly in the dark, guiding them toward the target. The reef looms ahead, a massive concrete monolith rising from the seabed, artificially built up from the coral. It looks like a fortress wall underwater, encrusted with barnacles and sharp debris. A web of steel cables and fiber optic sensors blocks the path, an underwater early warning system. The lead diver signals with a closed fist. The formation halts. He draws a hydraulic cutter from his belt. The jaws clamp onto the thick wire. He squeezes the trigger. The tool whirs, vibrating through his arm. Metal shears with a sharp snap. The cable whips back, stirring up a cloud of silt. The diver pushes through the gap, his fins kicking silently. Suddenly, a high-pitched ping strikes them. Active sonar. It hammers against their skulls, a physical blow in the dense water. A small unmanned underwater drone buzzes past, its propeller churning the water. The divers freeze. They hold their breath, floating in neutral buoyancy, indistinguishable from the drifting debris. The drone turns, sweeping its spotlight beam through the gloom. The light slices through the silt, illuminating the particles like dust in a sunbeam. It misses the lead vehicle by inches. The drone engine fades into the distance. The team accelerates. They reach the massive concrete pilings supporting the artificial island. Barnacles scrape against their tactical gloves as they find purchase. They pull limpet mines from their packs. Heavy magnets clack against the wet concrete. The diver twists the timer dial. Red LEDs blink to life. 1 mine, 2, 10. The foundation is rigged with high explosive charges. Back on the attack submarine, the sonar operator taps his glass screen. He detects the specific rhythmic breathing of the rebreathers returning. He looks to the commander and holds up 4 fingers. The commander adjusts his headset, his face illuminated by the radar scope. He orders the helm to bring the vessel to a shallow depth, opening the vertical launch tubes. He marks the detonation time on the digital map. The divers drift away from the rigged pilings, vanishing back into the deep water toward the recovery point. The red lights on the mines blink faster in the crushing darkness. The artificial island sleeps above, the concrete runways and barracks resting on a lattice of steel that is about to shatter. The timer ticks down to 0. So 3:30 hours, perimeter wall, Mischief Reef. The South China Sea remains flat as a sheet of black glass. Searchlights cut through the humid night air, sweeping the empty waves in a monotonous rhythm. On the concrete seawall, a sentry adjusts the sling of his assault rifle. He leans against the railing, watching the reflection of the moon on the water. The rhythmic lapping of the tide against the artificial barrier is the only sound. The base behind him sleeps, a sprawling complex of hangars and radar dishes encased in shadows. The ground trembles beneath the sentry's boots. He grips the railing, confusion crossing his face. A low rumble vibrates through the concrete steel reinforcement, deep and guttural. He looks down. The water at the base of the wall begins to boil. The ocean surface tears open. Massive plumes of white water and jagged concrete hurl into the night sky. The shockwave slams into the seawall, instantly pulverizing the foundation. The sentry is lifted off his feet and tossed like a rag doll into the churning foam below. A 50-foot section of the barrier slides into the sea, dragging a machine gun nest with it. Metal screams as thick rebar snaps under the strain. The alarm klaxons blare, a piercing mechanical shriek that shatters the calm. Floodlights snap on, bathing the destruction in blinding white light. From the darkness, engines roar. A fleet of rigid-hull inflatable boats bounces over the swells, emerging from the gloom. The bowgunners squeeze their triggers immediately. Heavy caliber rounds chew up the remaining concrete. Tracers streak red and green across the gap, weaving a deadly web. Bullets spark violently against the steel blast doors of the outer bunker. Enemy soldiers pour out of the barracks, half-dressed, helmets unstrapped. They dive into sandbag positions, frantically loading magazines. An officer runs along the trench line, barking orders and pointing toward the breach. A heavy machine gun opens up from a fortified pillbox, the muzzle flash lighting up the panic. Rounds stitch a line of geysers across the water, hunting the approaching boats. One assault boat takes a direct hit from a rocket-propelled grenade. It explodes in a ball of orange fire and black smoke. Debris and bodies scatter across the waves. The surviving boats do not slow down. They throttle forward, engines screaming, aiming straight for the smoking gap in the wall. The lead boat crashes onto the rubble ramp. Marines vault over the sides, weapons raised, boots hitting the scorched concrete of the enemy island. 3-4-5 hours, Beachhead Alpha. The breach is a choke point of noise and confusion. Black smoke billows from the burning wreckage of the lead boat, obscuring the enemy positions. Marines huddle behind piles of shattered concrete rebar, their uniforms soaked with seawater. The ocean behind them churns as the heavy lift force approaches. 3 massive amphibious assault vehicles roar out of the surf. Their engines scream as tracks bite into the wet ramp. They crush the debris, pushing deeper onto the artificial island. The rear ramps drop with a metallic crash. Infantry squads flood out, boots stomping on the hard ground. Instantly, the night erupts. 2 concealed machine gun nests on the airfield perimeter unleash a crossfire. Green tracer rounds slash through the smoke. The heavy caliber bullets hammer against the side of the lead assault vehicle, stripping away the external storage racks. Sparks shower the infantry. Concrete splinters into razor-sharp shrapnel. A Marine screams, clutching a shattered leg. His squadmate grabs his drag handle and hauls him behind the tracks of the armored vehicle. The air is filled with the snap and hiss of supersonic rounds. The enemy gunners adjust their aim. Bullets stitch a line across the ramp, pinning the second squad against the seawall. A grenade lands near the tracks. It detonates, sending a spray of metal fragments pinging off the vehicle's hull. The Marines return fire blindly, their rifles flashing in the gloom. But the enemy is dug in deep behind reinforced concrete. The company commander slams his fist on the hull. He yells over the roar of the battle, pointing his knife hand toward the left bunker. A heavy weapons team scrambles forward, staying low. The gunner rests a rocket launcher on a piece of rubble. He tracks the muzzle flash in the dark. He ignores the rounds snapping past his helmet. He pulls the trigger. The backblast kicks up a cloud of dust. The warhead streaks across the tarmac and slams precisely into the bunker aperture. The explosion vents outward, blowing the sandbag roof apart. The enemy gun falls silent, buried under a collapse of smoking debris. 400 hours, airspace above Mischief Reef. The sky is a canvas of deep indigo and violent orange. At 20,000 feet, the air is thin and freezing. Inside the cockpit of the lead U.S. fighter jet, the heads-up display glows green against the darkness. The pilot breathes rhythmically through his oxygen mask. Below, the battle is a chaotic map of tracers and burning wrecks. The radar warning receiver screams a high-pitched tone. A red box locks onto the horizon. 2 enemy fighter jets punch through the cloud layer, afterburners glowing blue. They dive aggressively toward the U.S. formation. The lead enemy jet opens fire with its internal cannon. Tracers streak past the U.S. pilot's canopy, missing the glass by inches. The U.S. pilot yanks the control stick hard right. Massive G-force slams him back into the ejection seat. His vision blurs at the edges. He thumbs the countermeasure switch. Bright magnesium flares eject from the tail, burning white-hot to confuse the sensors. An enemy heat-seeking missile veers off, detonating harmlessly in empty air. The U.S. pilot rolls the aircraft, inverting violently to get behind the attacker. The targeting tone goes solid. He squeezes the trigger. An air-to-air missile drops from the wing and ignites. It accelerates instantly to Mach speed, leaving a trail of white smoke. It slams into the enemy jet's engine exhaust. The aircraft disintegrates. A massive fireball illuminates the clouds. Burning debris rains down toward the ocean surface like a meteor shower. Low over the water, a flight of attack helicopters skims the wave tops. They pop up over the seawall, their rotors chopping the humid air. A fortified guard tower on the north perimeter spots the movement. The tower's spotlight swings around, blinding the lead helicopter. Heavy machine gun fire erupts from the tower, sparking off the helicopter's armored belly. The helicopter gunner reacts instantly. The nose-mounted rotary cannon spins up. It roars, a terrifying continuous buzz like tearing canvas. Hundreds of high-explosive rounds saw through the guard tower's steel support legs. The metal screams and buckles, the entire structure tips over, crashing onto the runway in a shower of sparks, shattered glass, and twisted steel. On the ground, a Marine forward air controller shouts into his radio handset. He points a laser designator at a reinforced supply depot. High above, a bomber releases a single precision-guided bomb. The munition falls silently, correcting its fins in the wind. It punches through the concrete roof of the depot. A split second later, the building expands outward. The shockwave blows the heavy steel doors off their hinges. Secondary explosions ripple through the structure as ammunition stores cook off, sending plumes of black smoke choking the airfield. 4:30 hours, the inner defense line. A thick haze of gray concrete dust and black smoke hangs over the battlefield. The noise is a constant grinding roar of small arms fire. A platoon of Marines lies prone behind a low decorative wall, pinned down by heavy fire from the elevated main defensive berm. Bullets chew through the masonry, showering the men with sharp stone chips. The air smells of sulfur and wet earth. A medic drags a wounded rifleman into a shallow crater, his hands slick with blood as he applies a tourniquet. A squad leader grabs a combat engineer by the vest and shoves him forward. The engineer nods, gripping a heavy canvas satchel charge. He crawls on his stomach, digging his elbows into the mud. Enemy rounds kick up geysers of dirt inches from his helmet. He keeps his head low, sliding through the debris until he reaches the base of the massive reinforced wall. He slams the block of plastic explosive against the concrete surface. He twists the primer, yanks the safety pin, and rolls violently into a drainage ditch. He screams the warning. The explosion is a sharp concussive crack that sucks the air out of the lungs. The wall disintegrates. A massive section of concrete and rebar collapses, creating a ramp of rubble. The dust cloud billows outward, blinding the enemy gunners. "Go, move!" the squad leader roars. The Marines surge forward. They sprint across the open ground, bayonets fixed. They scramble up the loose rock of the breach. The first Marine over the top fires his weapon from the hip. He drops into the enemy trench on the other side. An enemy soldier lunges from the shadows, swinging an entrenching tool. The Marine deflects the blow with his rifle barrel and drives the heavy stock into the soldier's face. The enemy falls back, stunned. The trench becomes a slaughterhouse. Marines drop in one by one. It is too tight for long rifles. They draw combat knives and pistols. A Marine kicks open a supply door and throws a frag grenade. The blast vents through the narrow corridor, hurling 2 enemy soldiers against the dirt walls. A shotgun gunner pumps a round into the chest of a rushing defender, lifting him off his feet. The momentum shifts. The Marines push aggressively, clearing the zigzagging trench line corner by bloody corner. The enemy breaks and retreats toward the airfield. The squad leader climbs out of the ditch, wiping grime from his eyes. He pops a green smoke canister. The colored smoke hisses, marking the secured breach for the following wave. 500 hours. Logistics parking lot, southern edge of the airfield. The pre-dawn light turns the smoke-filled sky a bruised purple. The parking lot is a graveyard of burning enemy trucks and twisted metal. A Marine weapons platoon sprints into the open space, boots crunching on shattered glass. They drop heavy steel base plates onto the cracked asphalt. The metal clangs loudly. They slam the mortar tubes into the sockets and spin the traversing handles. "Adjust fire! Direction 160!" the section leader screams. He checks his compass, ignoring the stray bullets snapping over his head. A low, vibrating drone fills the air. It grows louder, shaking the ground. A massive 4-engine transport plane drops out of the low clouds. Its landing lights cut through the gloom, illuminating the runway. The landing gear unfolds with a mechanical whine. It is seconds from touchdown, carrying hundreds of enemy reinforcements. "Hang it! Fire!" The assistant gunners drop rounds down the tubes. Thump, thump, thump. The mortars buck against the asphalt. The projectiles arc high into the gray sky. The transport plane flares its nose, tires screeching as they kiss the concrete. The mortar rounds fall. The center of the runway erupts. 3 high-explosive shells detonate in a tight cluster directly in the plane's path. The concrete shatters, throwing jagged slabs of tarmac into the air. The pilot tries to throttle up, but it is too late. The nose wheel strikes the lip of a fresh crater. The steel strut shears off instantly. The nose of the aircraft slams into the ground. A shower of bright orange sparks sprays behind it like a comet tail. The fuselage buckles. The right wing dips and digs into the runway. The massive turboprop engine tears loose, tumbling across the tarmac in a ball of fire. The plane cartwheels, metal screaming as the frame twists apart. The fuel tanks rupture. A wall of fire engulfs the wreckage, sliding hundreds of feet before coming to a rest against the control tower. The heat is intense enough to blister paint 100 yards away. 5:30 hours, Officer Barracks Complex, Central Sector. The sunrise fights to penetrate the thick black smoke rolling off the burning runway. Inside the main accommodation block, the air is choked with dust and the smell of cordite. The hallway is narrow, lit only by flickering emergency red strobes. A Marine fire team stacks up silently against a steel door. The point man signals with a closed fist. He presses his ear to the cold metal. Muffled shouting comes from inside. The breacher steps forward. He raises a heavy sledgehammer. He swings. The metal head impacts the door handle with a deafening clang. The lock mechanism shears off. He kicks the door open. "Flash out!" he screams. A cylindrical grenade arcs into the room. 1 second passes. A blinding white light detonates with a thunderous bang. The concussion shakes the walls, blowing out the windows. The Marines flood the room. Their tactical lights cut through the lingering magnesium smoke. 2 enemy officers stagger blindly, hands covering their ears, disoriented by the blast. A third enemy soldier, crouched behind an overturned desk, raises a pistol. The point man fires, double tap. The rounds strike the soldier in the chest plate. He falls backward, knocking a lamp off the table. The other Marines shout commands to get down. They zip-tie the stunned survivors. "Room clear!" The team flows back into the hallway. A door at the far end swings open. An enemy machine gunner steps out, hip-firing a light automatic weapon. Bullets chew up the drywall, filling the corridor with a storm of white powder and plaster chunks. The Marines dive for cover behind concrete support pillars. Rounds spark off the floor, whining as they ricochet. The squad leader taps the shoulder of the team's shotgunner. The Marine nods. He leans out from cover. He pumps the slide. He fires. The heavy slug hits the enemy gunner in the shoulder, spinning him around and slamming him against the wall. The weapon clatters to the floor. The team advances. They move aggressively, checking every corner. They reach the stairwell. A grenade drops from the floor above, bouncing down the metal steps with a metallic ting-ting-ting. "Grenade!" The Marines scramble back. The explosion rips the steel railing apart. Shrapnel shreds the drywall. Dust rains down from the ceiling. Before the smoke clears, the squad leader rushes the stairs, firing his assault rifle upward to suppress the enemy. He climbs over the twisted metal, boots sliding on shell casings and debris, pushing the fight to the second floor. 600 hours, North Sector, underground hangar access. The sun is fully over the horizon now, casting long, sharp shadows across the cratered landscape. The ground beneath the Marines' boots begins to vibrate. The vibration turns into a rhythmic shaking. Dust dances on the cracked pavement. A low mechanical growl echoes from the earth, growing louder until it drowns out the distant gunfire. At the base of the radar hill, massive camouflaged hydraulic doors groan. Steel grinds against steel. The doors slide apart, revealing a dark tunnel mouth. A light tank tears out of the shadows. Its engine whines at high RPM. It drifts around the corner, treads chewing up the asphalt. The turret swings instantly toward the exposed Marine squad. The main cannon fires. The muzzle blast kicks up a massive cloud of dust. The shell slams into a concrete retaining wall behind the Marines. The wall explodes. Chunks of masonry the size of engine blocks tumble down, burying a supply crate. "Armor, front!" a squad leader screams. A second tank surges from the tunnel, bypassing the first. Its coaxial machine gun lights up. A stream of tracers sweeps the street at knee height. Marines dive behind rubble piles and burnt-out trucks. Bullets spark violently against the metal cover, pinning them down. A Marine heavy weapons specialist scrambles up a mound of unstable debris. He slips, scrapes his shin, and claws his way to the top. He's exposed. He shoulders the anti-tank missile launcher. He looks through the thermal optic. The tank fills the view. The targeting computer whirs. A solid tone buzzes in his ear. The tank commander spots the movement. The turret begins to rotate. The heavy machine gun elevates. The Marine pulls the trigger. The missile ejects from the tube with a sharp thwack. Then the flight motor ignites. It streaks across the open ground, riding a tail of white smoke. It slams into the side of the lead tank, right between the road wheels. The explosion is metallic and brutal. The steel tank tread snaps like a rubber band. The heavy metal links whip through the air, decapitating a palm tree. The tank lurches violently to the left, momentum spinning it out of control. It slides sideways, crashing broadside into a concrete bunker. The engine stalls. Black oil sprays onto the hot exhaust, igniting instantly. The hatch pops open. The tank crew scrambles out, coughing in the thick smoke, only to be cut down by Marine rifle fire from the ruins. 6:15 hours, forward defensive line, Central Plaza. The tropical sun beats down on the exposed concrete, baking the blood-stained ground. Marines crouch behind the twisted wreckage of the destroyed light tank, their chests heaving. Ammunition is critically low. Empty magazines clutter the asphalt around their boots. The battlefield falls into a brief, terrifying lull. The only sound is the crackle of burning fuel and the groans of the wounded. A whistle blows from the enemy position, a sharp, piercing sound that cuts through the smoke. A massive roar rises from the radar hill. Hundreds of enemy soldiers emerge from the haze. They abandon cover. They sprint across the open tarmac and a solid wall of gray uniforms. It is a desperate, final human wave attack. Contact front! They're rushing us! A squad leader screams. The Marines open fire. Machine guns chatter, barrels glowing red hot. The lead row of enemy soldiers collapses, cut down by the scythe of bullets. But the wave does not stop. They step over the bodies of the fallen, firing wildly from the hip. They throw grenades as they run. Explosions walk closer to the Marine line. Shrapnel pings off the tank hull. The distance closes rapidly, 100 yards, 50 yards. The enemy bayonets catch the sunlight. The company commander grabs the radio handset. He dives into a shallow crater as bullets kick dirt into his face. He screams into the mic. He calls for immediate naval gunfire support. He reads the coordinates of his own position. He yells the code words, "Danger close." 5 miles offshore, the turret of a guided missile destroyer swings violently to the right. The 5-inch main gun elevates. It fires, boom, boom, boom. The ship rocks in the water. The air above the plaza tears open with the sound of a freight train derailment. The shells arrive. They slam into the earth just 30 yards in front of the Marine line. The ground liquefies. Massive geysers of dirt, concrete, and red mist erupt into the sky. The concussion is apocalyptic. The shockwave lifts the Marines off the ground and slams them back against the tank tracks. The enemy wave simply evaporates. Bodies are hurled hundreds of feet in the air, ragdolling in the blast pressure. The heat sears the eyebrows of the dug-in Marines. Debris rains down for 10 seconds. Chunks of asphalt, twisted rifles, and smoking helmet fragments. The smoke is so thick it blocks out the sun. The firing stops. The screaming stops. The commander shakes the dirt from his radio. He looks over the rim of the crater. The plaza is empty, save for smoking craters and silence. 6:45 hours, command and control bunker level 3 underground. The air here is recycled, cool, and smells of burnt electronics. The roar of the battle above is just a dull, rhythmic thumping against the reinforced concrete ceiling. In the main operations room, enemy intelligence officers frantically feed documents into shredders. A senior officer smashes a computer server rack with a fire axe. Sparks shower the floor. The emergency lights flicker, casting long, jumping shadows against the steel walls. A sudden, high-pitched hiss comes from the main blast door. The metal turns cherry red in a perfect circle around the locking mechanism. Molten steel drips onto the linoleum floor like wax. The officers freeze. They draw their service pistols, aiming with shaking hands at the glowing metal. The circle completes. The heavy steel plate kicks inward. It clangs loudly against the floor. A canister rolls through the hole. "Gas! Gas!" an officer screams. The canister spins, spewing thick gray smoke. The room disappears in a fog. The enemy soldiers cough, their eyes streaming. They fire blindly into the doorway. Bullets spark against the frame. Through the smoke, 4 figures emerge. They move with unnatural speed. They wear quad-lens night vision goggles that glow faintly green. They do not cough, they do not hesitate. The lead special operator raises his suppressed carbine. The weapon coughs. 2 rounds strike the nearest guard in the chest. He drops without a sound. The operator steps over the body, sweeping his weapon left. An invisible infrared laser beam dances across the smoke, visible only to the team. It settles on the forehead of the senior officer. The trigger breaks. The officer collapses, the fire axe clattering from his grip. The room descends into a chaotic strobe light firefight. Muzzle flashes illuminate the smoke for split seconds. The special ops team moves like a single organism. One reloads while another covers. They check corners. They clear the room zone by zone. A technician tries to pull a lever on the wall console. The self-destruct sequence for the island's radar array. A knife flies across the room. It buries itself in his forearm. He screams, clutching the wound. An operator tackles him, driving a knee into his ribs. He zip-ties the technician's hands before he can hit the floor. The team leader reaches the main power distribution unit. He pulls a block of C4 explosive from his pouch. He slaps it onto the breaker panel. He shouts the warning. The team turns away. The explosion is contained but violent. The panel blows out. Plastic and copper wire spray across the room. The monitors on the wall go black. The humming of the servers dies instantly. Above ground, the massive radar dish stops spinning, its electronic eye blinded. 700 hours, main runway, southern approach. The wind picks up, swirling the black smoke into thin gray ribbons. The sun glares off the white concrete, illuminating the scars of the morning's battle. The ground begins to tremble again. But this time the vibration is rhythmic, beating against the chest. The sound is distinctive, a heavy chopping thrum that fills the entire horizon. 6 massive tilt-rotor transport aircraft drop out of the sky. Their engines rotate from horizontal to vertical with a mechanical groan. They hover over the cratered tarmac, kicking up a storm of dust and debris. The landing gear touches down with a heavy thud. The rear ramps lower instantly. Fresh squads of Marines sprint down the ramps. They look clean, their gear untouched by the grime of the night's fighting. They fan out immediately, weapons raised, moving past the exhausted, soot-covered survivors of the first wave. The company commander signals forward. He points toward the commercial shipping docks at the far end of the island. "Push them to the sea," he yells. The combined force surges forward. The remaining enemy soldiers retreat into the maze of stacked shipping containers. The fighting shifts to brutal close-quarters combat within the steel canyons. A Marine fire team rounds a corner. An enemy machine gunner, positioned on top of a red container, opens fire. Bullets hammer against the pavement, sparking near their boots. The Marines dive for cover behind a forklift. "High ground, 11 o'clock!" A designated marksman leans out from behind a crate. He levels his long-barreled rifle. He takes a breath. He fires once. The round strikes the enemy gunner in the helmet. The helmet shatters. The gunner tumbles from the top of the stack, hitting the ground with a wet crunch. The Marines press the advantage. They move lane by lane, clearing the container rows. They throw smoke grenades to mask their movement. The gray smoke mixes with the salty air. Enemy soldiers fire blindly through the haze, their resistance becoming desperate and uncoordinated. A squad of enemies tries to make a stand behind a stack of oil drums near the pier. A Marine grenadier raises his weapon. The launcher makes a hollow thump. The 40mm grenade arcs over the drums. It detonates in the air just above their heads. The blast shreds the cover. Shrapnel punctures the oil drums. Black crude oil leaks out, pooling around the fallen bodies. The surviving enemy forces scramble backward. They hit the edge of the pier. Behind them, there is only the 50-foot drop into the deep ocean. They are trapped. A heavy silence falls over the container yard as the Marines stop, forming a firing line 20 yards away. Hundreds of muzzles point at the huddled group near the water. 7:30 hours. The loading pier. The silence is heavy, broken only by the cry of seabirds returning to the reef. The standoff holds. 50 Marines aim their weapons at the water's edge. 20 enemy soldiers stand on the lip of the concrete, their backs to the sea. The humid wind whips their torn uniforms. The enemy commander steps forward. He looks at the solid wall of Marine muzzles. He looks at his bleeding men. Slowly, deliberately, he unbuckles his pistol belt. He holds it out. He drops it. The weapon hits the concrete with a sharp metallic clack. "Cease fire! Cease fire!" a Marine sergeant bellows. The enemy soldiers follow suit. Rifles clatter to the ground. Hands rise into the air. The tension snaps. The Marine line advances. They move quickly, kicking weapons away, spinning prisoners around. Plastic zip ties lock shut with sharp zipping sounds. They pat down the captives, tossing radios and maps into a pile. "Corpsmen, up!" Navy medics rush past the security perimeter. They drop their heavy aid bags on the hot asphalt. They kneel beside the wounded, friend and foe alike. They rip open pressure bandages with trauma shears. They stick IV needles into veins. Red blood pools on the gray concrete, mixing with the black soot. A medical helicopter descends nearby, the rotor wash flattening the grass as it waits to evacuate the critical cases. High above the chaos, 2 Marines climb the external ladder of the scorched radar tower. They reach the catwalk. The metal is still warm from the earlier explosions. One Marine pulls a knife. He slashes the halyard of the enemy flag. The fabric falls, drifting down to the rubble below. He pulls a folded U.S. flag from his cargo pocket. He clips it to the line. He hauls on the rope. The Stars and Stripes rises. It catches the stiff ocean breeze. It snaps open, fluttering violently against the backdrop of the smoke-filled sky. Below, the company commander watches the flag reach the peak. He keys his radio handset. "Mischief Reef is secure. Objective complete."